In this video, you will learn how to create this web app. It's a typical web app that gets some input data from the user. For example, this one here is a volume calculator. Let's say the user will enter the dimensions of a cube, like 4, 5.7, 3, and they can press calculate and they'll get the results here. So I'm including this web app in this course because this is a very modern way to distribute, to publish your programs, and you can just give the URL to people and they can use your program. So let's build this app in this video. For this, we're going to use the Flask library. So go to packages and install Flask if you haven't done so already. Then you want to go to the directory and create a directory tree, which is basically just a templates folder. So you should create an empty directory, name that templates, and then you should have a main.py file or whatever name you want to give to your Python file. And then inside templates, you want to click there and add a file and name it index.html. It has to be an HTML file. So what we're having here is an HTML file and a Python file. The HTML is responsible to render all these visual elements, so the text, these text boxes, input boxes, the button, all these are built using HTML language. And Python is responsible to do the processing of the data. So in this case, we're going to get these 3 numbers from the user, and then we're going to implement a formula in Python to calculate the volume, which is basically that times that times that. And then we get a final number, and then we send that to this place here in HTML. Now, if you right click here and go to inspect element, you can see the HTML of this page. Of course, you cannot do this because you don't have the URL perhaps, but you can see on my screen here. So basically this 68.4 corresponds with this element. So it's a p HTML element. And then we have things like input boxes. So this here, it's an input element. So it's designed to receive input from the user. A p element is designed to display some text to the user. And then we have other things like h1. This is designed to display big text, so this h1 tag here. So that's the HTML part, basically, that we're going to write here inside index.html. So you might want to start either with the HTML code, or you can start writing the Python code. I prefer to work on the front end first, so on the HTML part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the HTML document here. So you start with div elements. These are the outer elements. A div is basically a division, a section on the HTML website, which could contain other elements. So we have the div, for example, and then we could have an h1 tag. And you should work like this. So you open that tag here, you close it with this backslash, as you see on my screen. The same goes with other tags. You open it there, you write the content in here, so volume calculator, and then you close the tag there. And then perhaps you want smaller text. For that, for smaller text, you need p tags. So open a p tag, close it here, and then in between the tags you write something like enter the 3 dimensions to get the volume. Right? So far, this is the end product, just for you to see as a reference. So far we built that, we wrote that part. Now we have to have some sort of form HTML elements. For that, we need the form element. So open it and close it, and in between now, form will contain different input elements. And it's good to have those input elements inside div tags. So inside this, we have the first input element, like that. And we're going to have 3 of those. So 1 there, 2, and 3. Let me fix the alignment. So you see the hierarchy of the elements. It means this h1 tag is part of that div tag. This is also part of that div tag. Form is part of the div tag as well. And then we have this other div tag, which is part of the form. It's nested inside the form. So all these div tags are inside that form. And then after the input boxes, we should have a p tag to display the output. So let's create a p tag, p, like that. Let's leave it empty for now, because we're going to inject the output dynamically with Python inside these p tags. This is just a static HTML string or text, but this will be dynamic. And then lastly, we have the button element, which is going to have a label, calculate. And that's it. So that's the basic HTML. We have to improve it further, but for now that's enough. Now let's create the backbone of our web app, which is done via Python. And the Flask web framework comes in handy. So we have different frameworks to use with Python. We also have Django and Flask, probably the most used ones. Django is best for bigger web applications which have a big database and many pages, and Flask is best for smaller web apps like this one. So from Flask we want to import the Flask class and then create an instance, a web app instance using that Flask. This class gets as input a string, but it is a good practice to put as input a special __name __ variable. This is a special variable that contains a string, and this string is the name of the current module. This could be needed later on and we will cover that, but for now let's just ignore this __name __. Let's just put it here and carry on with the other code. Then we have to think of where the user, the URLs that the user may be visiting. So the first one we have to think about is the home page. So when they visit the home page, that is represented via this backslash. If they visited example.com/about, that would be /about. And then you write a function such as define home, and then in this function you basically return that index.html document. So that means if the user visits your domain, which could be example.com/about, you will return that HTML to the user so that they see it on the web browser. That's how Flask works. If you remove that, that means if they go to example.com, again they will see what we return here, which is, as I said, the index.html. But you don't just do that, but you use a render template function, which you have to import in here. So render template, import it and use it in here, and provide as a string the path to the HTML document that you want to serve. Oh, let me remove the double return. So this should be index.html and not template/index.html, because Flask is designed to look inside a templates folder for these HTML documents. So it's important that your folder is named exactly templates like this, not templates with a capital T. So it should be this lowercase letters template. And to make this app work now, we need one more line. and that is calling the run method of this Flask app instance. So the Flask class creates an instance, and this instance has this method which will run the actual application. Now, if you are on a local computer such as Windows, Mac or Linux, you can just leave this like this. But if you are using a REPL, you need to change the host to a string which is 0.0.0.0. So you don't have to add this if you are on a local computer. But REPL is a bit special, so it has to serve the application in this host. IP address. Now I can run this, and immediately we can see the web app. So we can see it here in this split screen, or you can just copy that URL. So now that is a public URL. You can just paste it in your browser and you can see your web app. However, nothing will happen at this point. So if I enter some values like that and press on calculate, we're not going to see anything because we haven't given any instructions to the calculate button what to do when that button is pressed. So the page does reload, but we don't see anything. So let's do something about this. But first you need to understand GET requests and POST requests. So both are HTTP requests. An HTTP request is this. If you load a URL, you are making an HTTP request to a server. And a GET request is when you are just getting data from the server. You are not sending any user information. So if you load this page, if you just want to see the empty boxes, if you just load it as I just did, that is a GET request. But if you enter some data in some boxes or some other widgets such as checkboxes and so on, you are sending data to a server. That is a POST request. And the POST request occurs when you press this button. So if you press on calculate, you are sending those data. However, we have not yet implemented a POST request. All we have is a GET request. This one in here. So what we need to do is we need to copy that and paste it one more time. And here, as a second argument, we say methods equals to a list, and the list has one item. It has this post string. So now this URL, so the home page, can handle both GET requests and POST requests. Now let's do something here. Let's print here just a GET request string, just to see what we get in the command line. And here get POST request. So we want to see when one function is being executed and when is the other. So with that, I stop the script and I run again the web app. So when you want to make a change, you want to do that. Now we get this error here, assertion error, which says that the view function is overwriting an existing endpoint function home. So we do have two functions. We have to rename one to something like home post, right? And then run again. And we get the web page, and I'll just use it from this window. You can also use it from here. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing, but this is more practical. So enter something, some values, press on calculate, and we still get the GET request string in here. So this function is executing when we press that button, you see. And that is because we need to add something else in the index.html file. We also have to make the form able to handle POST requests by adding form method is equal to the string post. So inside the form tags, you see this bracket opens here and it closes in here. Stop, run, press on calculate. This time we do get the string get post request. So why do we need to distinguish between GET requests and POST requests? Well, we need to do that because when the user just loads the page as it is, we just want to show these. And when the user presses that button, then we want to get this data from the user and calculate them and then return them to the user. So we do all that inside this second function here. So let's get the data from the user, these data here. How do we do that? Well, you know that in index.html we do have these input elements which generate these boxes. Now we need to give names to these input boxes. So inside this tag, you say name is equal to, let's call this first dim, so first dimension. And do the same for the other ones, name equal to second dim, and the third one, name equals to third dim. So 2 input boxes with names. Now we can refer to these boxes from the Python function to get those input values and then process them. But first we need to import request from Flask. So just add it there, and then let's create some variables. So dim1 request dot form, and we get the first dim. Because you know form now is a list, and I can comment that out and just print request dot form here. So stop, run, just to show you what we get. So if you enter 6, 6, 7, calculate, and we get this immutable multidict which resembles a list. So it has these tuples, and each tuple has the name of the input and the value that the user entered. So now out of that list we need to extract first dim, second dim, and dim3, third dim. So now we have each value that the user enters stored in each of these variables. Then we can calculate the volume as volume is equal to, be aware that these are strings, so we need to convert each of them to a float. dim1 times float, dim2 times float, dim3. Now we could print out the volume in here, just print volume, but that will show the volume in the command line. The command line is just seen by us programmers. So we want to show the output to the user, to the web app. We do that by using Jinja variables. So remember that we said we're going to put the output in these p tags, which are underneath these text boxes, between the last text box and the calculate button. So in there, we could use this special syntax with double curly brackets. And inside here, you put a variable output, for example. This is just a variable that should also reflect a variable in here. So now in render template, in the home post function, we send as output, so that variable output will be replaced with the value of volume, right? So we inject the volume in the output variable. Stop, run, 3, 4, 5, calculate, 60 is the output. So it's working. However, it is not user-friendly at the moment because the input values disappeared. To fix that, you also want to send back to that page some other variables. So let's say dim_1 is equal to dim1. So that one goes in here. And dim_1 should also be a variable in this template. Through the value property of input tags. So value equal to, you know, you can also put a constant here. So the value, let's say example, and stop and run. So example will now be a default value of this input box. But if you put not a string there, but a Jinja2 variable, so these are called Jinja2 variables. In the Flask template engine, Jinja2 is what makes possible to do this syntax. So there we do the same dim underscore 1. So don't confuse this variable with that. That is the argument name that we sent to the HTML file, so that should be the argument name. The value is dim1, that one. So now, if I stop this and I run it again, we get this first dim. Oh, because I forgot to put quotes around this, like that. So single quote there, or double quotes if you want. So run again. Yeah, now we don't see the value, but if I put 4, 5, 6, calculate. Now the 4 is there because the function will send that dim1 value. So we first get it from the user. When the user first enters that, we store it in this variable and we hold it and we send it back to the form. So there you go. So let's do the same for the other variables. Dim underscore 2 equals to dim2, and finally dim underscore 3 is equal to dim3. Let's do this here as well. So I'm just copying that, paste it in the other input elements and change that from 1 to 2, and here as well change that from 1 to 3. Stop, run again. 1, 2, 4, calculate. And this time we do see the values, so the input values and also the output. Lastly, let's improve the layout of our website, because currently we don't have what is called as CSS. CSS is another language that you apply to your HTML code to make it look more modern and more user-friendly. Now, we don't have to write any CSS because we have libraries, CSS libraries, such as Bootstrap, which is very easy to use. So all you have to do is just search on Google for Bootstrap, and the getbootstrap.com website is the official Bootstrap website. So if you go to down here to JS Deliver, and if you copy that CSS only, I'm just using this copy button, copy that, go back to your HTML file and just paste it in here. Stop, run. And we're going to see already that this looks a bit better. But the way Bootstrap works now is that you want to give these HTML elements Bootstrap classes. For example, if you want to make the outer division, so the entire page, a bit different, you want to apply the class container. So that is a Bootstrap class. If I stop this now and I run it again, you see now that the page is a bit shifted on the right. So there is some margin here between the left border of the browser and where the content starts. Then if you want to make this button to give it a color, for example, you want to go to the button tag again. So just like we went inside the div tag, so you see the opening bracket, the closing bracket, we go again to the first button tag here and we say a space class is equal to open and close quotes btn. You say that this is a button and you say that this button has a warning color which will make it yellow. So stop, run, and this is how the button looks like now. Lastly, let's put some placeholders to these boxes because they don't have labels. So what you can do is you go to the input tag and say placeholder is equal to first dimension. Let's do the same for the other one. Stop and run. Now we see that they do have some sort of labels, placeholders inside. And the app will still work. Calculate, we get the output here. Yes. So now your app is distributable. You can just get this URL and copy it and give it to anyone, and they will use your program in a nice interface. So you don't have to give them command line programs which they have to install and so on. So thank you for following this, and I'll talk to you later.